A dog lay on the brink of death, chained and forgotten. No one thought he could survive, but when a woman found him, what happened next shocked everyone. On a blazing August afternoon, Rachel Weber, a rescuer with 15 years of experience, got an urgent call at Hope Animal Sanctuary. The dispatcher's voice was tense. "We need help on Cedar Grove Road. There's a large white dog, chained, possibly aggressive. Animal control is busy with another case." Rachel grabbed her rescue kit and called out to her colleague, Marcus. "Let's go now." Driving through rural Pennsylvania, the hot wind blew through the van's open windows. The dispatcher's words echoed in Rachel's mind. The dog had been chained for months. The stench from the area was unbearable. Rachel tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She'd seen so much in her career, but something told her this would be different. When they arrived, the scene hit them like a punch. An old rundown trailer sat in a yard overgrown with weeds. Behind it, Rachel saw what looked like a pile of dirty rags. But as she got closer, she froze. It wasn't rags. It was a dog. He was barely alive. His white fur was filthy and matted, crawling with flies. Deep wounds covered his body, and a thick, rusted chain dug into his neck. His ribs stuck out sharply and he didn't move, except for a slight lift of his head. Rachel's heart broke as she crouched down. "Hey there, sweet boy. We're here to help." To her amazement, his tail moved. Weak and slow, but it wagged. Even after everything, he still had hope. "Marcus, grab the bolt cutters. We need to get him out of here now," Rachel said. But just then, the trailer door slammed open. A man stumbled out, holding a beer. "What do you think you're doing with my dog?" he slurred. Rachel stood tall. "This dog needs medical help, and we're taking him." The man sneered. "He's mine. Cost me $300. Rachel's stomach churned with anger, but she kept calm. "We'll pay you $300, right now." After a tense moment, he agreed. Marcus cut the chain, and they carried the dog to the van. Rachel whispered, "I'll call you Duke. No matter what they did to you, you've kept your dignity." As they drove off, Duke wagged his tail once more, as if saying, "Thank you." Duke's life hung by a thread as Rachel and Marcus sped down the road in their rescue van. The stench of infection still clung to Rachel's nose, and she couldn't shake the image of Duke lying in the dirt. She glanced back at him, his frail body motionless on the stretcher. Every rib was visible, and his fur was tangled and filthy. "How long has he suffered like this?" she muttered. Marcus's voice broke the silence. "Do you think he'll make it?" Rachel hesitated. "He's a fighter. We just have to get him to Dr. Sanos in time." When they pulled up to the emergency vet clinic, Dr. Elena Sanos was already waiting outside. The moment she saw Duke, her face fell. "Get him to treatment room 1, she said, pulling on gloves. "This is going to take everything we've got." The next few hours were a blur of urgent care. Duke's temperature was dangerously high, and his body was riddled with infected wounds. The chain had cut so deeply into his neck that his flesh was raw and bloody. Shaving away his matted fur revealed scars and bruises, evidence of years of abuse. Maria, a young veterinary assistant, carefully inserted an IV line. "I don't get it," she whispered. "After everything he's been through, why isn't he snarling at us?" Rachel, who hadn't left Duke's side, stroked his head. "Some dogs are just special. He's one of them." Even in his fragile state, Duke amazed everyone. During a particularly painful cleaning of his neck wounds, he lifted his paw and rested it on Maria's arm, as if to comfort her. The room fell silent, and Maria wiped her eyes. "He's incredible," she said softly. As midnight approached, Duke's condition worsened. His fever spiked to a dangerous level, and his breathing became labored. Rachel stayed by his side, softly reading from a worn book she kept in her rescue kit. "You're safe now, Duke," she whispered. "We're not going to let you go." To everyone's relief, by morning, Duke's fever broke. It was a small victory, but it gave Rachel hope. Dr. Sanos met Rachel's tired eyes. "His heart is strong. He's got a chance, but it's going to be a long road." Rachel nodded, her hand still on Duke's head. "We'll fight for him, just like he's fighting for himself." The hardest part was far from over. Duke's body was starting to respond to treatment, but the extent of his injuries became clearer with every passing day. The infected wounds on his neck needed frequent cleanings, each one requiring sedation because of the pain. His back and sides were riddled with scars, some old and some fresh. The sight of it left even the most seasoned clinic staff shaken. But what stood out most about Duke was his demeanor. Despite everything, he trusted the people around him. He never growled or snapped, not even during the most painful procedures. One day, while Dr. Santos was applying ointment to a particularly deep wound, Duke gently placed his paw on her arm. Maria, standing nearby, whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." Classical music became part of Duke's daily routine. The soothing sounds of Bach seemed to calm him during treatments. The staff noticed how he would close his eyes, his body relaxing as the music played. "He's got good taste," Marcus joked one afternoon. Rachel visited him every day, bringing treats and staying by his side through the toughest moments. She documented Duke's progress on social media, sharing updates and photos of his recovery. Before long, Duke's story had captured hearts around the world. Messages of encouragement poured in from strangers, along with donations and gifts. One day, a package arrived from Japan, a handmade collar embroidered with symbols of strength and healing. But while Duke's physical recovery was steady, his emotional scars ran deep. The sound of a chain rattling or raised voices made him tremble. He developed a habit of hesitating before eating, as if he wasn't sure the food would stay. At night, he struggled to sleep alone, often whimpering in his kennel until Rachel sat beside him. Seeing his fear, Rachel made a decision. With Dr. Santos's approval, she began sleeping at the clinic on a small cot near Duke's kennel. Each night, she read to him softly until he fell asleep. "You're safe now," she reminded him. Slowly, Duke began to trust that someone would always be there for him. After weeks of care, Duke achieved a small but profound milestone. During one of Rachel's visits, he gently picked up a squeaky toy, a polar bear donated by a local child. Rachel watched in amazement as he wagged his tail and mouthed the toy. "That's yours, Duke," she said with tears in her eyes. "It's all yours." Duke's recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional. And the moment that would change everything came one stormy night. The clinic was quiet, but outside a thunderstorm raged. A sudden power outage plunged the building into darkness. Rachel, who had been lying on her cot near Duke's kennel, heard him whimpering. She rushed to him, expecting to find him cowering in fear. But instead, Duke was pawing at the gate, his eyes wide and alert. "What's wrong, boy?" Rachel whispered. Duke tugged at her sleeve, leading her across the room to a small kennel where a kitten had been placed earlier that day. The tiny creature was trembling, its meows barely audible. Duke lay down beside the kitten's cage, his presence calm and steady, as if to reassure the frightened animal. Rachel stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. "You're not just healing, are you?" she murmured. "You're helping others heal too." This moment marked a turning point. Over the following weeks, the staff began introducing Duke to other rescued animals, carefully observing his interactions. Time and again, his presence had a remarkable effect. Nervous dogs relaxed around him. Even the most traumatized animals seemed to find comfort in his calm energy. One particularly challenging case was a young pit bull named Max, who had been abused and was terrified of human contact. Max growled and barked at anyone who came near him, except Duke. When Duke sat quietly outside Max's crate, the pit bull's growling stopped. Within days, Max began mirroring Duke's behavior, approaching the crate door without fear. The staff watched in amazement. "It's like he's telling them, if I can trust again, so can you," Marcus said one afternoon. Duke's ability to connect wasn't limited to animals. One day during a walk in the park, he suddenly pulled Rachel toward a bench where an elderly man sat, his head in his hands. The man was crying softly, lost in grief. Duke walked up to him and rested his head on the man's knee. Startled, the man looked down at Duke, then smiled through his tears. "My wife used to have a dog just like him," the man said, stroking Duke's fur. "I lost her last month. This is the first time I've smiled since then." Rachel was beginning to see that Duke wasn't just a survivor, he was a healer. As Duke grew more confident, Rachel decided to take him on short trips outside the clinic. During one outing, a jogger carrying a metal water bottle passed too close, and the clanking noise startled Duke. He froze, trembling. Rachel crouched beside him, gently stroking his fur. "It's okay, sweet boy. You're safe now." Moments like these reminded Rachel that Duke's journey was far from over. But it wasn't just about his fears anymore. Duke's gift for understanding emotions became increasingly clear. During another walk, he pulled Rachel toward a woman sitting alone on a bench. The woman, startled by Duke's approach, smiled nervously. Duke sat beside her, wagging his tail gently. As Rachel struck up a conversation, the woman admitted she'd been struggling with anxiety. "He seems to know exactly how I feel," she said, her voice trembling. "How does he do that?" Rachel didn't have an answer. All she knew was that Duke's capacity for compassion was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Word of Duke's special gift spread beyond the clinic. Rescue organizations began reaching out, asking if Duke could visit their facilities to help other traumatized animals. Under careful supervision, Duke began working with dogs who had suffered extreme abuse. His gentle presence seemed to send a message. "You're not alone. There's hope." But as much as Duke was helping others, Rachel knew he still needed a place to call home, a place where he could heal fully. She began the search for a family that could give him the stability and love he deserved. Rachel was determined to find the perfect match, but deep down, she couldn't help wondering, who could possibly be worthy of a dog like Duke? Duke had become a symbol of resilience and compassion, but as his recovery continued, Rachel knew it was time to find him a forever home. It wouldn't be easy. Duke needed more than just a loving family. He needed someone who understood the depth of his trauma. The answer came unexpectedly. One day during a therapy session at the clinic, Rachel met Claire Henderson, a retired trauma counselor who had started volunteering at the sanctuary. Claire often brought her teenage daughter, Emma, who struggled with anxiety. From the moment Emma met Duke, something remarkable happened. Emma, normally reserved, knelt beside Duke and began petting him. Duke, in turn, rested his head on her lap, his eyes soft and understanding. Claire watched the interaction, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "Look at how they mirror each other," she said. "It's like they speak the same language." Claire explained that Emma had been struggling for years, withdrawing more and more into herself. But with Duke, she seemed different, calmer, more confident. Emma had even started smiling, something Claire hadn't seen in months. Intrigued, Rachel began visiting the Hendersons' home to see if they might be the right fit. The family lived on a quiet farmhouse with 5 acres of land, perfect for a dog like Duke. Claire showed Rachel the space they had prepared, a sunroom with heated floors, cozy beds, and large windows overlooking a peaceful garden. Emma had even picked out a special reading chair where she and Duke could spend time together. But the real test came during Duke's supervised visits. On their first visit, a delivery truck backfired in the driveway, startling Duke. He froze, trembling. Before Rachel could react, Emma sat on the ground beside him, speaking softly. "Breathe in peace, breathe out fear," she said, reciting a calming verse she used for her own anxiety. Duke's trembling stopped as he leaned into Emma's side. Rachel watched, her heart swelling. "They heal each other," Claire whispered. Over the next few visits, the bond between Duke and Emma deepened. Claire and her husband, Tom, a veterinary technician, made sure every detail was perfect. Tom even installed nightlights in the house to ease Duke's fear of the dark. By the 4th visit, Rachel knew she had found the perfect match. Adoption day was bittersweet. The clinic staff, who had grown to love Duke, prepared a small ceremony. Rachel handed the Hendersons a box of Duke's favorite things, his squeaky polar bear toy, his special collar from Japan, and a note, "Take care of him. He'll take care of you too." As Rachel hugged Duke one last time, she whispered, "You're home now, sweet boy. You're finally home." Under the care of the Hendersons, Duke began to blossom in ways Rachel had always hoped for. Emma and Duke became inseparable, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Morning walks in the garden, quiet afternoons spent reading in the sunroom, and evenings filled with peaceful companionship became their routine. Inspired by Duke's resilience, Emma started a blog called Lessons from Duke. In it, she shared his story and the lessons she learned from their time together. "Today, Duke taught me about patience," she wrote in one post. "When the neighbor's dog barked endlessly, Duke didn't react. He simply sat, calm and steady. He's teaching me to do the same." The blog gained attention, not just from animal lovers, but from mental health professionals who saw Duke as a symbol of hope and healing. Claire, noticing Duke's impact on Emma and others, approached the local hospital about their therapy dog program. After a rigorous evaluation, Duke became their most requested therapy dog. In the children's ward, Duke performed miracles. One day during a visit, he pulled gently toward a room where a 10-year-old boy lay unresponsive. The boy had been in a traumatic accident and hadn't moved or spoken in weeks. Duke rested his head on the boy's bed, waiting patiently. After a few minutes, the boy's hand moved, just slightly, to touch Duke's fur. His mother gasped, tears streaming down her face. "That's the first time he's moved since the accident," she said. Back at home, Duke continued to help Emma overcome her own struggles. Her confidence grew, and she began speaking openly about her anxiety. She even joined her school's animal welfare club, eventually becoming its president. "Duke showed me that helping others is the best way to heal yourself," she said during a school presentation. The Henderson home became a haven for other rescued animals. Duke's gentle presence helped foster dogs overcome their fears and trust humans again. Claire and Tom documented his methods, creating what they called the Duke Method, a guide for rehabilitating traumatized animals. Rachel often visited Duke, marveling at how far he had come. "He's not just a survivor anymore," she said. "He's a healer, a teacher." Duke's story was no longer just his own. It became a legacy, inspiring others to believe in the power of second chances. Years passed and Duke's story only grew more extraordinary. The Hendersons' home became known as a sanctuary for animals and people alike. Duke helped foster countless rescue dogs, guiding them with his calm, steady presence. Claire and Tom expanded their efforts, opening a small rehabilitation center on their property. The Duke Method was adopted by rescue organizations worldwide, proving that even the most broken animals could find hope again. Emma, now a young adult, credited Duke with changing her life. "He taught me that healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about finding purpose in it," she said. Inspired by Duke, Emma pursued a career in veterinary behavioral medicine, focusing on helping animals recover from trauma. But Duke's greatest impact wasn't just on animals. At the hospital, his visits became legendary. Nurses and patients alike marveled at his ability to connect with people in their darkest moments. One day during a routine visit, Duke entered a room where a teenager sat, withdrawn and silent after losing his father. Without hesitation, Duke rested his head in the boy's lap. Slowly, the teenager began to pet him, his tears falling onto Duke's fur. "I don't feel so alone anymore," he whispered. As Duke grew older, his pace slowed, but his heart remained the same. On the 10th anniversary of his rescue, the Hendersons held a celebration at the rehabilitation center. Former patients, animals, and supporters gathered to honor Duke's legacy. Emma, now a confident young woman, addressed the crowd. "Duke's story didn't end when Rachel rescued him," she said. "It was just the beginning. Every life he's touched, every heart he's healed, it's all part of his legacy." Rachel, standing quietly at the back of the crowd, couldn't hold back her tears. She thought back to the day she first found Duke, chained and broken. Now he was a symbol of everything she believed in: resilience, compassion, and the power of second chances. That evening, as the sun set over the Henderson sanctuary, Duke lay in his favorite spot in the sunroom, surrounded by the family who had become his world. Emma sat beside him, reading softly from their favorite book. Duke's eyes closed, his breathing deep and steady, as if he knew he was finally, truly home. In the end, Duke's story wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation, about how love and kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. Duke's journey was nothing short of extraordinary, a story of survival, transformation, and the unyielding power of compassion. From the day Rachel found him, chained and broken, to the moment he became a beacon of hope for others, Duke showed the world what it means to truly heal. His scars, both physical and emotional, became symbols of strength. He didn't just survive his trauma, he turned it into a purpose. Whether it was comforting frightened animals, helping patients in hospitals, or inspiring Emma to overcome her own struggles, Duke proved that even the deepest pain can be transformed into something beautiful. The lessons Duke taught were simple but profound. Kindness matters, healing takes time, and no life is beyond saving. His influence extended far beyond the Henderson Sanctuary, touching the hearts of people and animals around the world. The Duke method, born from his gentle approach, revolutionized how rescue organizations rehabilitated traumatized animals. As the years passed, Duke became a symbol of hope for anyone facing darkness. His story reminded the world that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there is always a chance for redemption, a chance to find joy, love, and purpose again. Rachel often reflected on the day she first met Duke. She'd never imagined the impact that one broken dog could have, not just on her life, but on the lives of so many others. The true miracle, she said, isn't just that Duke survived. It's that he helped so many others find the strength to do the same. In the end, Duke's greatest lesson was this: it's not what happens to you that defines your story. It's how you choose to move forward. And Duke, against all odds, chose love, healing, and hope. As the sun set over the Henderson Sanctuary, Duke rested peacefully, surrounded by those who loved him. His legacy would live on in every heart he had touched, a testament to the power of second chances and the boundless depths of the canine spirit.